Hi everyone. Welcome to the Celebrity Diaries. Esther Rolle, an American entertainer, was brought into the world in Pompano, Oceanside, Florida, in November 1920, remaining a permanent blemish on both TV and movie, known for her depiction of Florida Evans in the weighty series Maude from 1972 to 1974, as well as its side projects. Great Times from 1974 to 1979, R's ability graced the screens of millions. Her commitment stretched out past the little screen with vital jobs in films like Cleopatra Jones, Don't Play as Modest, and The Awfulness of Romeo and Juliet, in spite of her noteworthy vocation moves passing in November 1998, remaining a void in media outlets anyway. Her heritage perseveres with her total assets of $3 million at the hour of her demise, filling in as a demonstration of her prosperity and impact during a period when such abundance was not effectively amassed. Great Times has been broadcasting live starting around 1974. It's not only an earth-shattering sitcom that hit TV screens, it's likewise a social achievement. What compelled it stand apart was its humor, or its drawing-in storyline, as well as its portrayal of a two-parent dark family, something seldom seen on TV at the time. At the core of this notable series was Esther R., a gifted entertainer with a voice like honey and a will of iron. Rejuvenated the personality of Florida Evans, the solid yet cherishing matron of the Evans family. Yet R's commitment to Great Times stretched out a long ways past her acting abilities. It was her emphasis on credibility that genuinely separated the show. You see, when Roe was offered the job of Florida Evans, she had one condition: there must be a mentor in the family. This wasn't simply an impulse or a passing extravagant, it was established in R's own childhood, experiencing childhood in a huge family with the current dad. She comprehended the significance of portrayal, as she once clarified for Midnight Magazine. I had a decent dad. I believe that the characters should depict a family as mine supported. Then statement spec. This request wasn't met without obstruction. Norman Lear, the maker of Great Times, was at first reluctant about remembering a mentor for the sitcom, yet R wouldn't move. She knew the meaning of her solicitation for herself, as well as for the large numbers of viewers who might tune in every week before creation even started. R moved toward Lear with assurance in her eyes and shot in her voice. She clarified that she wasn't only there to assume a part, she needed to say in how the show depicted dark day-to-day life in the most natural-sounding way for her. Lear, am I going to have some say regarding this show? Recall that I've been dark the longest, and her determination paid off against the odds. Great Times turned into a hit, catching the hearts of crowds the nation over. Yet more than that, it prepared people for the future of dark entertainers, and entertainers showed them that they could request validity and portrayal in an industry that frequently neglected them. Great Times made a striking presentation on TV screens, rapidly collecting high evaluations. The show's climb to prevalence was joined by the rise of its champion person. J.J. Evans, depicted by Jimmy Walker, is popular for his irresistible expression. Explosive J.J. infused an energetic humor into the series, spellbinding crowds all over his critical lines. For example, "Aren't you happy you lit your finger strolling 'cause you got kids?" Explosive communication of everything resounded profoundly, with viewers adding an additional layer of delight to the show's story, while Jimmy Walker's depiction of J.J. Evans carried gigantic ubiquity to the Great Times. Not all cast members were similarly enchanted by his on-screen tricks. Esther R. and John Amos, who assumed the parts of the television mother and father separately, wound up fairly eclipsed by JJ's personality. Initially considered a show fixated on nurturing inside a dark family with a funny way to deal with handling difficult issues, the spotlight progressively moved towards JJ because of his colossal ubiquity with crowds. Ralph Carter and Bernard Stannis depict the Evans youngsters. Michael and Thelma wound up exploring various ways inside the story. Michael held on to the desire of turning into a legal counselor, while Thelma sought to turn into a specialist. Jimmy Walker's depiction of the jobless JJ on Great Times gave more than adequate giggles, but less substance, as his personality's jokes became progressively key to the show's humor anyway. John Amos, among others, communicated worries that JJ's conspicuousness was drifting the series away from its expected spotlight on family values. Amos accepted that the person at first intended to be a simple part of the show steadily transformed into a predominant power, eclipsing the center subjects. He deplored JJ's depiction as an 18-year-old who neither worked nor had essential education abilities, contending that this portrayal deviated from the show's unique goals. In 1975, during a meeting with Coal-Black magazine, entertainer Esther R. communicated her discontent with the depiction of the most established kid character in the famous program Great Times. She voiced her anxiety over pessimistic generalizations being sustained, especially those proposing that accomplishment for dark youth could be accomplished through inaction and clownish conduct. Rose stubbornly expressed, "I despise the symbolism that says to dark children that you can make it by remaining on the corner, saying explosive." She clarified that she would have rather not taken an interest in a depiction that corrupted youthful individuals of color, regardless of her R complaints. R recognized that not all comical minutes should have been eliminated from the show. She accepted that there must be an equilibrium struck among satire and conscious portrayal. A few cast individuals volunteered to contribute extra plans to the content, with the end goal of keeping up with this equilibrium and safeguarding the depiction of the real world. Anyway, pressures heightened when disarrays emerged between the entertainers, scholars, and makers, including Norman Lear. At last, John Amos, who played the personality of James Evans, the family patriarch, was shot because of what were alluded of keeping up with this equilibrium and safeguarding the depiction of the real world. Anyway, pressures heightened when disarrays emerged between the entertainers, scholars, and makers, including Norman Lear. At last, John Amos, who played the personality of James Evans, the family patriarch, was shot because of what were alluded to as inventive contrasts in the fourth season of the darling sitcom. Great Times viewers saw a huge change in the storyline as Florida Evans, played by the skilled Esther, experienced another person named Carl Dixon. Carl, depicted by Moses Weapon, was presented as a skeptical retailer who turns into Florida's unforeseen old flame. This advancement blended feelings among fans, and, surprisingly, inside the actual cast, Esther R.I., who depicted Florida Evans, communicated her misgivings about Carl Dixon's personality. She accepted that his depiction didn't exactly resound with the embodiment of who Florida Evans was, and she had an uncomfortable outlook on the speed at which the show portrayed Florida, continuing on from the deficiency of her better half, James. This uneasiness ultimately prompted Esther R.'s choice to leave Great Times, as she turned out to be progressively disappointed with where the show was taking. As the series advanced into its fifth season, the storyline went off in one more strange direction as Florida Evans ended up connected to Carl, notwithstanding his conclusion of cellular breakdown in the lungs, in an amazing disclosure. It was unveiled toward the start of the fifth season that Florida and Carl had secured the bunch off screen and migrated to Arizona. This was an obvious and critical takeoff from the show's past spotlight on the Evans' relational peculiarities with the shortfall of John Amos, who played the fatherly figure of James Evans. With John Amos never again part of the cast, the obligation of directing the Evans family fell upon Janet Duas. Character Willona, the neighbor and family companion, Willona arose as the essential guardian and defender of Evans' youngsters. Accepting a lead job in the series, her consistent presence gave dependability and consolation to the kids as they explored existence without their folks in their new Arizona home. And the advancement of Great Times makers perceived a void left by the shortfall of Florida, and James Season 5 introduced another person. Penny Gordon Woods is depicted by Janet Jackson as a mishandled and deserted young lady. The option of Penny planned to infuse a maternal presence into the show, prompting the storyline of Willona embracing her, while these endeavors made the series more mediocre for certain viewers. Numerous yearned for the arrival of Esther R. and John Amos, missing the power they brought to the show regardless of creations. Endeavors to keep up with crowd commitment confirmed by different, unexpected developments and character advancements. Evaluations kept on declining all through the fifth season before the sixth and last time of the showmakers understood that Esther R. and John Amos might have been correct in perceiving the urgent job that Florida and James played in mooring the show's storymakers confronted a brutal reality. Without their directing presence, Great Times risks losing its crucial quintessence and, subsequently, its crowd. Steve Factories, then VP of CBS Programming, sincerely recognized the show's decay, referring to an abundance of criticism from viewers, mail calls, and exploration information. The decision was clear. A revisitation of the show roots was basic. Consequently, the makers stretched out a solicitation to Esther R. to reprise her job as Florida Evans. Thanks for watching this video.